What can we say about Hieronymus Bosch? He was a rebel, a trendsetter, and an extremely skilled painter. An author on Bosch's work, Melanie Kleyer, states that Bosch has, quote, unbelievable powers of imagination and invention, end quote. We can see Bosch's originality and creativity in these details of his works. But despite Bosch's surreal and imaginative touch, his pieces usually center on religious subject matters, such as his The Temptation of St. Anthony, Last Judgment, and one of his most famous works, his tabletop of the 7 Deadly Sins and the 4 Last Things. But without a doubt, Bosch's masterpiece is his triptych, The Garden of Earthly Delights. This podcaster argues that the center panel of Hieronymus Bosch's triptych, Garden of Earthly Delights, also portrays the 7 deadly sins, but in an updated, unreserved style that reflects Bosch's transformation as an artist, along with the shifting views of his society. Let's begin with the background of Hieronymus Bosch. He was born Hieronymus Antonisson van Aken around 1450. After establishing himself as a painter, he changed his last name to Bosch, after his hometown of 's Hertogenbosch in the Netherlands. Bosch was an avid member of the group and dining club Brotherhood of Our Lady. According to the Brotherhood of Our Lady's records, Bosch's funeral service was in 1516. The 7 deadly sins are listed as lust, gluttony, pride, wrath, sloth, greed, and envy. They come from Christianity as part of its ethics. From about 1400 to 1600, morality plays were a popular way of teaching audiences about Christian ethics and therefore quite often about the 7 deadly sins. Morality plays were so popular that they could draw in audiences of over 4,000 people. Without a doubt, Bosch's fervor for depicting the 7 deadly sins was impacted by the popularity of morality plays. Bosch's 1485 work, The 7 Deadly Sins and the 4 Last Things, is an overt depiction of Christian morality. A wheel of scenes of the 7 deadly sins surrounds a portrayal of Christ emerging from his tomb in the center. The blue of the center of the circle, combined with the rays surrounding it, imitates an iris and lends to the idea that the center of this circle also acts as the eye of God. Bosch's depiction of the 7 deadly sins in this work is clear, detailed, and perhaps frightening to the viewer. In the 7 deadly sins and the 4 last things, Bosch presents a clear, conspicuous portrayal of the 7 deadly sins. But while this piece's subject matter is clear and given in the title, it is not the only work by Bosch to display the 7 deadly sins. 18 years later, in 1503, Bosch created his masterpiece, The Garden of Earthly Delights. Today, this piece continues to attract attention and spark endless debate. While most scholars agree that the left panel portrays the Garden of Eden and the right panel Hell, an unending debate among scholars remains regarding the center panel. In comparing the Garden of Earthly Delights with its predecessor, the 7 Deadly Sins and the 4 Last Things, it is evident that the center panel of the former triptych also depicts the 7 Deadly Sins. Aside from the rampant nudity in this work, Bosch portrays lust in various details of men and women in suggestive poses. Bosch portrays gluttony in the hoarding of strawberries throughout the piece. A group surrounds an enormous strawberry, guarding it as their own, while a man in the foreground covets an even larger strawberry and attempts to eat the entire berry himself. Bosch portrays pride in the man holding a handstand while gazing at his reflection in the blue orb. Wrath shows itself in the detail of the man in the animal stampede, who holds his fish aggressively, his posture uncannily similar to the one adopted when holding an arquebus, a 15th century firearm. Bosch depicts sloth in the couple inside the clam in the foreground. A devious man carries the clam down a hill, with the couple inside it oblivious to the fact that they and their clam bed are being abducted. In a separate detail, a man hides in a red orb. His idleness attracts no other company but a black rat. The artist portrays greed in the detail of the man who carries the strawberry on his back. He not only hoards this strawberry on his back, but also attempts to take a vine of black fruit from a couple. He uses his arm to forcibly move the couple away from the vine as he greedily pulls it. Finally, Bosch captures envy in the man sitting amongst the flock of birds. While people around him happily ride their birds, this man melancholically slumps on his red-faced bird as couples all around him engross themselves in passion. This man mourns his loneliness as he envies the happy couples around him. The differences between Bosch's The Seven Deadly Sins and the Four Last Things and Garden of Earthly Delights do not reflect a difference in subject matter, but rather the transformation of Bosch himself as an artist. Bosch painted Garden of Earthly Delights 3 years after 1500, the date many believed would be the end of the world. As Reindert Falkenberg, a writer on the triptych, asserts, the Garden of Earthly Delights does not represent Bosch's own dreams, but those of humanity at large. Apocalyptic propaganda convinced many Christians that the end of the world was imminent. When the world did not end in 1500, an atmosphere of jovial freedom emerged. It was in this atmosphere that Bosch painted Garden of Earthly Delights. In the nudity and revelry of what Falkenberg argues is utopian freedom, the figures in Garden of Earthly Delights reflect the attitude of the society Bosch lived in when he painted them. This change between the two depictions not only reflects Bosch's transformation of style as he aged from 35 to 50, but also a transformation in Bosch's society. Hieronymus Bosch was not merely another stroke on the canvas. He was one of the most inventive yet skillful painters to ever live. Thank you for listening to this podcast, and have a delightful day.